evening to you and welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Deon Abrams, and on the program with me this evening are Brother Tacuma Ogunseye and Brother Desmond Trotman. And together we'll be talking about current issues in the political landscape of Guyana. Welcome to the program, gentlemen.
Thank you, Deon, and good evening, viewers.
It's a pleasure always to be here.
Okay, well, we've had a recent incident with the Minister of Education, Dr. Rupert Rupnarai, collapsing at the reception being held for the visiting dignitary from Britain. How does the WPA feel about Dr. Rupert's condition and so on? What is his current state of health?
The party wish that a speedy recovery for the minister and comrade. As far as we know, it is nothing very serious. But of course, one never like anyone, to collapse. And we're wishing him a speedy recovery.
Okay, so has there been any recent update on his condition?
Well, what I gathered, Deon, is that he's been discharged from hospital. As Tacuma said, it wasn't, from the reports that we've had, it wasn't a very serious matter. They did say that he had suffered from dehydration. And needed to be
rehydrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm happy that his stay in the hospital will be short. And I'm glad that he will be back to work maybe from tomorrow. I know that the budget is due for consideration, for debate, and I'm sure that he will be there making his contribution. As Tacuma said, we are very happy that his recovery will be swift and full, and so that we look forward to him continue to perform his functions most reliable fashion.
Okay, well, speedy recovery to the minister. And in certain conditions, you need to drink a lot of fluid, yeah?
Yeah. This is very hot these days.
Yeah, I know. We have had the passing of Fidel Castro. And of course, reading some of the comments, you have both positive and negative, as it is with any person of his stature. But what is the WPA's take on Fidel, and what has the WPA done in relation to the passing of Fidel Castro?
Well, of course, the party put out a statement which I don't have intent to read on the program. And I think myself, Trotty, and the minister went and signed the condolence book on the behalf of the WPA. And I think the statement itself reflects the party attitude, to Fidel's passing.
You want to read the statement?
Well, I can read it.
Okay.
The WPA statement reads as follows. At this moment of grief, WPA join the Cuban people, the Communist Party, the government, and the world in mourning the passing of Comrade Fidel Castro, Commander-in-Chief of the Cuban Revolution for more than 5 decades. The passing of this iconic Caribbean, Latin America, and international hero is a moment for reflection. The poor and powerless of the world have lost a champion of their cause. Castro and the Cuban Revolution have fought tirelessly for the primacy of human development over capitalist profits, poverty, inequality of incomes and wealth. In good and bad times, Cuban commitment and spirit of international solidarity never wavered and remained the bedrock of that country's foreign policy. Cuba aid to nation states in the areas of education, healthcare, engineering, sports, and science speaks volumes. The excellent work by Cuba's international volunteer brigades in hurricane-hit Haiti is but one recent testimony of the revolutionary spirit embedded in the nation by Castro's leadership. The role played by President Fidel Castro, the Cuban armed forces, and the people in the defeat of apartheid South Africa's military aggression in Angola has cemented Castro and the Cuban Revolution in the history of that continent and its people. WPA, unlike the two main political forces in Guyana, did not have party-to-party relations with the Communist Party of Cuba, but we developed a close relationship with the Cuban government and its people. As a Caribbean people, we are proud of Cuba being one of us. Like many Guyanese, our members benefited from Cuban medical aid, and for this we thank Cuba. Our party remembered the principled stand taken by President Fidel Castro, the Communist Party, and government in condemning the assassination of Walter Rodney in spite of its highly valued relations with the Burnham government and the PNC. The Cuban people loss of their great revolutionary leader and comrade is also a loss to all progressive and peace-loving peoples. Castro and the Cuban Revolution will live on. WPA joins in saluting this great son of the Caribbean. End of the statement.
Okay, all right. Trotman,
Well, beyond the statement reflects how what WPA feels about former President Fidel Castro, late President Fidel Castro, and I don't think that we have hesitated to demonstrate how highly we held him, how the high esteem in which we held him, and we have, as the statement said, benefited over time from the medical programs which Cuba had. I myself am a beneficiary of that program, and I am deeply grateful for the fact that I've been exposed to the Cuban medical program, and my health today is as a result of their diagnosis and assistance. We look forward to the continued applause which former President Castro will receive. I was privileged to listen to former President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, paying homage to Fidel, and it really was very, very insightful. The way in which he spoke about the contributions that Fidel made to the South Africa and ANC cause, and notwithstanding the fact there are a whole number of naysayers, the fact of the matter is that one cannot fail to recognize that Fidel Castro really made an indelible impression on people's throughout the world, and we're grateful for his presence, and we continue to believe that he will be held in high esteem.
okay. I mean, yeah.
Before we go off the Cuban thing, I just want to point out that the WPA put out this statement, and none of the newspapers, okay, and the electronic media, I think except one radio commentator mentioned it, and I was very grateful that in yesterday's papers, after many days, Kaishua carried as a letter you know, in the letter column, you know, and I'm really concerned that, you know, on these important issues, I mean, even if you have a problem with WPA, I think that the significance of Castro's death, you know, and the Cuban assistance to Guyana, whether you agree with Cuba or not, I think it is worth, you know, all manifestations of solidarity should be made public, you know.
Okay.
I would say not only Cuban assistance to Guyana, but the Cuban assistance to oppressed people around the world is remarkable and continues to be remarkable. And so that, you know, I understand how Tacuma feels when it is that you understand that a statement which gives recognition to the work of this great freedom fighter found difficulty getting some kind of exposure.
Well, I guess it's I don't know, the prevailing mood. But if you read the history of Cuba, you will recognize that those who lament and say that Fidel was a dictator and all of these things, that the history before Fidel was one that was really, really what dictatorship signified. I mean, it's a terrible history, and the fight with Che and Fidel and so on to liberate the people of Cuba from the clutches of the capitalists, particularly the Americans, is one that really spells of a man who really needed to set his people, you know, free from tyranny and bondage and so on. And that was a long struggle because history of Cuba tells of not only one, it was a series of dictatorships, you know, backed by the Americans that oppressed the people in the most brutal way. All right, and that was the fight that Fidel had to get those people off the island and to set up a system that was seeking to bring, you know, the equitable distribution of wealth and all of these things to the Cuban people. But despite, you know, the good that people do, I mean, there is always some who will say that, you know, there are negatives and there are positives. And that is the nature of humankind. All right? But it's always good to recognize the good side and possibly highlight the areas that could have seen some improvement in terms of what Cuba would have achieved. Well, I don't know, but I'm saying that the gains that Cuba has made in health, in engineering, and so on, if you visit Cuba, you will be amazed at the infrastructure that is in place. I've often said that it will take Guyana, I don't know how long, to be able to get to that level of development, despite the difficulties that they've been facing over the years, which meant that the resources were being put into the economy for the development of Cuba itself. All right. The setback would have come after Gorbachev's declaration of glasnost and so on, and the Russians pulling back the kind of support that they would have been giving to Cuba. But still, the gains that have been made are credible and significant. All right. We have also, we want to talk about the budget a bit, but I did mention, I write a letter to the newspaper recently in relation to the National Grade 6 exam. And I had to do that because I felt for those children who wrote that exam in mathematics last year. And I'm hoping, well, this very year, and I'm hoping that there is not a repeat of what transpired in the last exam next year. The exam that was set was totally beyond the capability of the students. And if you give that paper to some student, to students writing CXC, all right, a whole lot of them will fail it also. And the questions were high-level questions beyond the scope of the curriculum for the students. and I don't know how that came about. Before the exam was set, there were some concerns about it. And when it was given to the children, the fact that 14% passed was a reflection of that concern. So I did say that going about the country and trying to find reasons for the poor performance is not the best way to go. You have to look at the examination itself, and the best way to do that is to test the exam, all right, to see whether it is reliable and valid in relation to the curriculum that is dispensed in the primary education system. And I would hope that they would do that and save money and correct a situation that, if repeated, will have the same result.
But it seems to me, Deon, as if it is that some conclusions have already been arrived at by the ministry. Because I was listening to, I think it was the chief education officer, and one other person on Channel 11.
Okay.
The other day, and they were discussing the same problem.
Okay.
And they were talking about some measures which they intend to put in place in order to address it. And I gather from after having read your letter and listening to them that there doesn't seem to be any agreement in relation to
the cause for the failure?
And,
agreement in what sense?
well, you were advocating a certain approach, and when I listen to them, I don't think that the approach which you've advocated is one that they're taking. Although your letter came after.
Okay.
So
Well, I would like to.
perhaps it will. Your letter might have given them some food for thought.
Yeah, I would like to, because even yesterday, before on Friday, I called our math teachers from our math department, the head of department, and so on, and I showed them the paper, and they too were totally flabbergasted by it. You understand? Because it's not a paper for those children at all. It is basically for children, children even in the fifth form are going to find difficulty in answering some of the questions that are set on that paper, right? And it's mind-boggling that those students who are 11, 10 years old are given a paper like that, and that they are expected to pass it, all right? And I'm hoping, that if they do the kind of assessment that I'm recommending, they will see exactly what I'm talking about, all right? But I can't understand that people who are involved, what bothers me is that, the people who are setting the paper should be more attuned to what kind of paper they're setting for the level of students that they're dealing with, and then what many of the primary school teachers say is that they're given guidelines in terms of how many questions will be recalled, how many will be higher level questions, and so on. And that paper went totally away from what they were taught, are told to deal with in terms of how they prepare the children for the exam. So it's some breakdown in every aspect, and those things need to be really, really addressed if the results are.
Whatever you're saying is true, this is a very serious problem.
It is.
And it has to be addressed very quickly, because it means that if they don't kind of latch on to your suggestion and take an approach that doesn't embrace the problem in a real way, you may very well find that the situation getting worse as time goes by.
What I'm hoping is to write another letter today to the newspapers with the paper itself, so that the questions can be made public for people to have a sense of whether I'm saying, what I'm saying is true or not.
I don't know. The sentiments that have been expressed on this matter from ordinary people who were involved either with the children or even teachers who teach in, all of them complain that the questions and the examination was too hard for the students.
Certainly.
I can't see how the Ministry of Education cannot take cognizance of that. Okay, whether they accept it officially, but I'm almost certain they are not, aware of it. And I'm sure that they will make the necessary adjustments, but I agree with you. You know, people should keep pressing the issue, you know, so that, you know, this thing don't happen again, because it demoralizes the children and the teachers and the parents. And, you know, we want to avoid that as much as possible.
Well, the point you are making is also very important, because sometimes some of these bureaucrats in moving towards a solution, the obvious
They don't.
they don't look at, you know, and so that it's important for them, for people like Deon, to keep bringing what their concerns are to the table, so that at least the ministry cannot or should not ignore the fact that there are persons who feel that a different approach should be taken, providing that the approach which they are taking is not in sync with what is being done.
And I would say the same letter should be sent to the ministry officially.
Okay. Okay, I can do that. I have no problems. But when I said I called the head of department and so on, I'm talking about people in a secondary school,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay, not primary school
Yeah,
teachers, and they were totally amazed by the fact that one mathematics graduate at the university was saying that, well, look, I've been in teaching for over 30 years, and I have to sit down, you know. I can't just look at these questions and come up with an answer. You understand? I got to sit down and think through how it is that I deal with these questions. You understand the level to which it was. One primary school teacher said, well, my teacher took 3 days to solve those problems.
How you expect it to be? within the time.
The papers get mixed up, man. The program was intended for another category of students, and it got mixed up.
It gotta be. I mean, one, in fact, it was another trained teacher, mathematics, who told me that, well, look, I have a copy of this paper, sorry, you should see it. Right? I'm going to bring it for you to see, right? Because he too was totally, you know, taken aback by the fact that this kind of questioning could have been given to that level of students, all right? So I'm hoping that it doesn't repeat itself. That our students, you can't test students beyond their capabilities, all right? That is one of the basic rules of testing. You don't test outside, you know, what is taught, you know, and in terms of, if you have a syllabus, you test within the syllabus, and then you test students based upon, you know, what you understand their capabilities are, depending on their ages and so on, all right? So something needs to be done, and I would hope that more people who are in the know are going to come forward. I mean, I got some reading through the comments from the online version of the Starbuck News. There were some very good and interesting responses, and I hope that those things will be taken on board, so that at the end of the day, our students do not suffer. All right? The budget.
Deon, before we go to the budget, I wanted to raise something, because I know we probably will spend some time on the budget. But recently, I've had cause to visit the Georgetown prisons.
Okay.
On a couple of occasions, and the last occasion when I went there, I met some persons who were also visiting. Now the thing is that I want to make it very clear that what I'm saying here has nothing to do with the treatment meted out by officials.
Okay.
Because the treatment by officials, I found those officials who I came into contact with to be extremely helpful, very kind, and their behavior, you couldn't desire more from them. But it is in relation to the waiting area where persons assemble when it is that they go to I believe that the prison authorities need to look at that area to do something in order to improve the conditions. The people have to be in a shed.
As within the prison compound
no,
or
this is
just
outside,
opposite
yeah,
the
opposite there,
on
opposite
Camp Street?
Yes. And they're waiting to be called to gain entry into the prisons. I was told that when rain falls, and I've seen it, there are lots of holes within the roof. It's holes in sheets. People will get wet. There's very little seating accommodation. But the more disturbing thing is that adjoining this waiting area is a a very large garbage receptacle. And the receptacle, because it's holding garbage, and the garbage from time to time will get wet, smells awful. I understand that from time to time, sometimes worms from the thing will be crawling into the
Waiting
area.
area.
So that I wanted to use this opportunity. I probably will even write the
Prison authority.
prison authority. Yes. But because it was asked by some of the persons there to raise it, I'm raising it publicly. And I'm asking the prison authorities to take a look at the situation. Because it really needs some improvement, some measure of improvement. The government should be able to find some money to have a proper waiting area.
You can't be treating visitors like prisoners, huh?
Well, I'm hoping the prisoners aren't treated
Well,
that way.
okay.
But I again want to say that this is not intended to throw any aspersions at the persons who deal with you when you visit inmates at the prisons. I found the treatment to be very cordial. They're very cordial, extremely helpful, and just that the area in which people are located have to be really needs some serious improvement, and I hope that something will be done very quickly.
Just one thing, I was taken aback. I don't know if you know Mrs. Hines, who was at one time acting RU at Region 4 there. She was Deputy RU, Regional Executive Officer, and then subsequently the elections she acted for a while and then went over to Region 3. But I was pretty taken aback when I read that a person of her stature would have been caught up in this drug smuggling thing. I mean, it left me so stunned that it seems as though these guys have, some kind of clutch that they can reach to a person of that level. And I'm wondering, what can be done to really make people understand that it's not an easy road getting through with these things. So many people are being caught so frequently, and yet people are willing to take the risk, to take these chances when people come to them with these kinds of offers.
Money, money is a powerful motivator.
It is.
It makes people take all kinds of risks. And the drug trade, strives on that. And then persons who may find themselves in difficult circumstances, if they allow huge mortgages and so forth, they may be tempted to take a chance.
Yeah,
and then, you get caught, and it becomes counterproductive.
Yeah,
but this thing is such a high risk, Deon. If it is, you take into consideration the fact that the airlines are not always reliable.
Okay.
Flights are not always on time. And the longer that this stuff remains in your system, the greater the chance that it could burst and, that's...
Kill you.
And if it is... personally, I understand some of the hardships that people are faced with. But I do not believe that it is reason enough for people to want to take the chance of doing what it is to do. And if it is that they ignore the consequences, well,
Yeah, but don't they understand that when they pass through, that they're being x-rayed? That
Well, you know, the drug dealers will coach them and give them some assurances, you know, and give them some assurances that either, they have some way around it, and so forth and so forth, and to be realistic, a certain percentage of people do get through.
okay.
So but it is not an area that I would advise any person, regardless of your economic or social problems, to walk down the road, because at the end of the day, it don't pay.
I know. Well, I'm really saddened by it because I was on the council at the time when Miss Hines was there, and I really do believe that she had great potential for,
there's so many things which actually bring you to the attention of the authorities, regularity of travel, so many things.
Yeah.
And if it is, but people deliberately want to ignore it. I believe that in the minds of those carriers is the thought that they
Will not be caught.
will not be done. And so it doesn't happen that way.
Okay.
And so you do the crime.
Well, it's sad, and it should be a lesson to others who may want to go down that road. Now, the budget, there are several things that are being said about the budget. The Private Sector Commission, I listened to the CEO of GT&T, I listened to the opposition, taxes, the zero rated to exempted, and the threshold, and all of these things are matters that are currently gaining a lot of attention. Now, I don't know where you want to start. What is your take on the budget and an overall perspective on, is it good or is it bad? Is it something that we can live with?
If I'm to start off, I would say that firstly, we have to see the budget in the context of the situation in the country. Okay, and then we have to see what is it the government is seeking to do, okay, with the budget in order to push the situation forward. I think it is general consensus that the Guyanese economy has been hit by internal and more so external factors that lead to some contraction of growth. So we are not in a situation, we are in that difficult situation. And the government, in all its budgets, from the first to this third budget, they have declared some very clear intentions. And one of them is to make sure that the country won't slide into negative economic growth.
Okay.
And so far, they have been able to achieve that. And I think that
without falsifying figures.
Without falsifying figures. So I think that's an important achievement. They have also set themselves the goal of controlling inflation to a manageable area so that they wouldn't eat into the real incomes of people. And I think they have been successful in that. They have also been trying with the budgets to help to realign or reorganize the economy on some more solid economic basis. And that is a more long-term process. Now, in the context of that situation, I think that the present budget for 2017, okay, is a budget that is continuing some of those objectives. And I think it's a budget that is realistic. It is a budget that tries its best to make sure that the real incomes of the workers are not affected negatively. Now, the opposition have been pushing the propaganda that as a consequences of the new taxes that the government, tax system that the government introduced, it will negatively affect wages and salaries. But yesterday, the GRA put out a statement in which they analyzed the measures in the budget, and they made a striking point. They demonstrate by showing the figures that at the end of the day,
You take home more.
the take-home pay for all workers will be greater than 2016.
There was also a program on the television in relation to that.
And I think this is important. We could argue about how big is the increase, but the fact is, the critical fact is the government ensure that the real earnings of the working people and the people in general is not negatively affected by the budget. Now, there are some other things, I guess, as we go on, we will discuss.
Brother Trotman, what is your overall?
Well, I tend to agree with Ogun's position, but I feel that there's an area in which it is that the government is lacking, and that is in the area of PR.
we always complain.
Yeah, we always complain about that. And I think that's important for us, for the government to understand right now that in relation to the budget, that it does more work in order to explain the situation. Like on the question of this VAT on water, VAT on electricity, there are some real explanations which, if government take the time to put to people, that people will accept and understand that it is not directed
at the ordinary poor.
Consumer. But if government doesn't do that, it will allow it allows the opposition to act in such a way as if it is that they have interest, a kind of interest in the people that they never demonstrated that they have during during the 23 years of our government. You know, I've been listening from time to time at some of the remarks that are being made. And I've been asking myself, what's wrong with these people? Where were they in the 23 years? Where are the measures that they talk about? They're asking this government to
scrap the
implement,
budget.
I mean, when it was that they prepared budgets, I remember as a parliamentarian for a short time, that the APNU would make a representation in relation to improving the budgets that they will that they will put out, and they would ignore those areas, you know, of representation. And here it is that these people are acting as if they're the government of the day and trying to tell you what is it you should be doing, and what you're doing is not right and should be doing, and you should be doing other things. I mean, it's nonsensical. The people must realize that for the 23 years that the PPP were in power, that the interest that they paid in the broad masses of people were nil. That they were more interested in advancing the interests of those close to them, and the arguments that they're making against this budget are, to my mind, nonsensical.
Well, you know, the PR bit is really one that should be taken on board, because initially when I listened to the budget speech and so on, my general perception was that they gave on one hand and took away on the other, right? But after closer analysis and listening to, you know, some of the brighter minds, then you came to understand that the budget really was designed to, you know, focus in a particular direction. The argument by the private sector, you see, private people don't like to lose, is that a lot of the impositions are going to fall back on the ordinary people. Now, how big an issue is that, you know, in terms of the exempted items and the VAT on water and electricity and so on?
But before we go there, I want to say something on the PR side of the thing, because I think it is very important, because I'm convinced that the PPP is going to use the budget debate okay, to wage a propaganda war. They're not going into parliament, to try to defeat the government on the strength of the logic of the arguments. They're going to use it as for propaganda purposes, and I think they feel confident that given the government PR weaknesses, that they could win up the propaganda war.
Okay.
And I think that we have to warn the government that you have to be very careful, and they have to get the PR professionals up to scratch, especially for this budget, because it's really going to end up to be a war for the minds of the people. The government, I guess the viewers will know that both myself and Trotty work in the office of the president, and they shared out this very beautiful, well done. I don't know if the cameras could focus on it, but it's a very glossy and well done handbill which seek to demonstrate the government increases in public sector wages from the time the government came into office. And they have all the statistics here in a very nice and easy to read way. But what I want to focus on is that if you look at the bottom here, you would see at the bottom here they say 2020 Christmas bonus for public servants under $500,000.
Not 2020, 2016.
Sorry, 2016, sorry. Yeah, you will see here 2016 Christmas bonuses for public servants earning under 500,000. And when the workers in the ministry saw this, everybody they was very happy to know that they would get a Christmas bonus. And I am certain that this handbill fell into Jagdio's possession, because the very next day this was circulated, Jagdio went on the air and demand that the government pay a month's wages as Christmas bonus. And I want to say that the government PR people have to be careful. If the government is not intended to do this, then it should never appear on this document or in any public document, because it does put the government in an awkward position, and it also gives ammunition to the opposition. So this was in a way a kind of PR disaster.
But the fact is that during the time of the PPP, you never really got a bonus as such. What they did was to hold you in abeyance until December, right?
And when they will make a 5% imposition.
Right, imposition, and so you got.
The PPP were more concerned with giving a bonus to the military
rather than to
the broad masses. I don't know of a single instance when the PPP gave a bonus to all public servants. They gave a bonus to the military because they wanted to buy the military loyalty. And that is why it is they made every year, they made sure that they had this
1 month salary.
Salary thing, and they gave it a lot of publicity, but it was directed only to members of the military. And nothing was ever given to public servants, to the larger public servants. So when it is Jagdio now argues, that the government, the PPP used to do this, they never did. And people must say that to them. They never did.
But I found the program that on Channel 11 very instructional in terms of the various categories of workers in relation to the reduction from 30% to 28%, and then the 40% after 120,000 and so on. Many people, after they would have done the calculations, all right, you see that people are earning $7,000 more, taking home $7,000 more, sometimes $5,11 and so on, because it seemed as though people were calculating 40% on the entire, salary above $180,000, when in fact it's not so. So those three ladies were able to clarify that position, to show that after they would have taken out your NIS and all of these things, that you are in fact taking home more than the perception that people have. that this thing is going to negatively impact your take-home pay, right?
But you see, my concern is
No,
this.
but they should come on programs like these and,
But you see,
and,
my
and all the
concern
other programs
is
to
look,
explain.
they're the
you know?
government. You prepare the budget. You have a certain advantage
Yeah.
because you know the measures. You should get your propaganda well prepared, you know, because you see, you got to understand this country, and I guess it's true for all countries. But I mean, I know Guyana best, and I feel more confident to speak to Guyana. Now, our masses, the ordinary people, their political views on social and political issues are shaped mainly by Starbuck News and Kaishore News. That is the first kind of significant connection they will have with the budgetary issues. And if you read Kaishore News and Starbuck News commentary on the budget, soon after the budget, they either deliberately or they overlook, but they never explain clearly. I will just isolate two issues. They never explain clearly the government's policy on the water and the electricity. They leave it in such a way, just announce these increases, but never explain it. Now, the same day, which is the next day after the budget I'm talking about, Chronicle had an excellent, on page 2, the following day Chronicle had an excellent breakdown of the budget, highlighting the finance minister and explaining clearly those two measures and other measures. But the problem we have, a lot of our supporters don't read the Chronicle.
Because of
historical purposes.
Yeah.
I mean, even though government have changed, I have never bought a Chronicle. And I in my workplace, we had all the papers. And I'm telling you, the first two papers I go to is Kaishore and Starbuck. You know? And I hardly even open a Chronicle. You know, these historical things don't wash out very easily. And I'm telling you. So even though they did respond, you know,
they're not using
the most effective,
influential and effective media.
You see?
Right.
So we have to look at those things because, you know, there's real conscience. So by the time we ready for the budget debate, and I guess in the budget debate, the government will explain and elaborate its policies and so on, and a little more clarity will come. But you have to try to make sure that when the budget is announced, the opposition and forces who may not be very interested in your agenda don't seize the moment and determine the consciousness of your support base. You have to understand that and have your thing prepared. So, you know, from day one, you're firing.
But Deon, I want to add something to what Tacuma said. I was reading Chris Ram's McCrae's analysis of the budget. And then in that analysis, they have a commentary on Saro. And the writer or writers went overboard in relation to Saro. But within that analytical review, there was a sentence when the writer or writer said that during his presentation of the budget, the finance minister, this might not be the exact words, but the finance minister did not make a single sentence in reference to salary. So in the budget presentation, there's no reference to salary.
But in the analysis, there is this vicious attack on salary. I call it vicious because to my mind that's what it is. And I ask myself this question. Why is it that there's a reference to salary when in the budget presentation, they who created the article said that the minister himself made no reference to salary? And I went on to say, is it that if Chris Ram is the author, is it that he's writing as an analyst
Or is it that he's writing as a budding political leader? Because my information is that Chris Ram is in the process of agitating for the formation of a political party. And if it is a second thing, well then his thing cannot be a fair and objective presentation, because here it is that you're making reference to something that the finance minister himself made no reference to in his presentation. And it really boggles the mind.
It doesn't connect.
Yeah, it doesn't connect. And so that I see this kind of viciousness, I consider it to be a vicious and unwarranted attack coming from Raman McCree in relation to the overall presentation. And it makes me wonder.
Okay, well, people have their own agendas. But at the end of the day, whatever you write, it's not for your reading alone. That there are other minds out there that are going to be like you have done, analyze and scrutinize and to judge your, ability to be credible and fair in your comments. So, what can we say? Things will never always be the way you want them to be. And people will always, in one way or another, comment on issues in their own deliberate judgment. All right? What we can do is clarify our positions just as you've done and make the public aware that the comments might not be justifiable in terms of how they were made. Okay? But they have their journalistic liberties that they utilize. And it's a big, the Fox News, you check the American media, you understand how things are. So we got to understand these things. But in a bit of a detail.
But Deon, I hope you don't move now from the budget.
No. I'm not.
I wanted to say something, and it follows from something that you yourself said.
Okay.
It is important, I believe, because remember this budget situation is going to be with us for some time.
Yeah.
Maybe we could ask the Minister of Finance to make himself available to come on the program and speak for an hour on some of these concerns that are.
But that's why I'm saying that we don't have to. For me, Trotty, it's not our place to go begging these people. They got to know what their job.
No, but I mean,
for me, we are.
Everything's been doing a program.
We have to canvas.
My position is that we're all in the thing together, all right? You know that you have the Walter Rodney Groundings. You know that you have the Good Morning Guyana show. You know that your PR people got to get in touch with these people and say, well, look, I don't believe,
But if they fail to do it, and we recognize the importance of having their views exposed to the public, we could ask them to do it. We could ask them to do it. And so that I'm suggesting that we make an entree, get them, invite them to come and sit down and talk to the public for an hour on the budget. And if you need to do it for another program, let us invite them and let them talk.
All right. But I believe, that in this dispensation that, they have to understand where their allegiances are and how they can best utilize, programs like Walter Rodney Groundings to further the cause of the government, and they're not doing that. And
yeah, but we got to put pressure on them to get them to do it,
So I'm hoping that they can really begin to understand that PR is a failure. And from the time the government took office, we've been making that point.
Yeah. I don't want us to press this PR thing longer, but look at this station. Anybody who understands Guyanese politics, for many years, China 9 has been the bastion of support and communication for our constituents. And we know they got technical problems and financial problems, and I'm really very concerned that, the powers that be, can't come up with a solution, and I think, you know, we got some weaknesses, we got to deal with. You see, culture don't change. I mean, I know they're in government now and they got GINA and they got other institutions, but they must remember, for the last 20-something years, our people have been disconnected from those official media places. And I still believe our best bet, in the absence of a newspaper that is under our control, is to widen the capacity of this channel, okay, and to help it to, reach a wider, cross-section of the country, because, to depend upon those conventional government institutions, we're going to pay a big price if we don't invest in dealing with those things that are already rooted in the consciousness of our people.
But the government must also look at the way in which Channel 28 and Guyana Times treats with their business, with the government's business.
Yeah.
And more and more the point that Tacuma has made just now becomes more relevant to what the situation is like. And we can't wait. We can't just wait and hope that something is going to happen. Something should have been happening a long time.
Well,
something should have been happening a long time.
So many things are moving at a snail's pace. It seems as though some people believe that we have
monies are owed to this station
all the time in the world
by certain agencies, and they're not even paying the money. Promises are made, to pay, and those things are not paying.
And they're paying.
The thing is just
Let me go back to the budget. Let me go back to the budget.
Oh boy, it's funny,
It's
I mean, you can give
these
a
contradictions,
Real. I mean, you think about a man who made an entire wharf float away, and then they and you got this. Oh Lord have mercy, I don't know. But we got time is on us. I would really.
We will come over
we
again
can come again because we got to talk about the fact that I mean, how many poor people are paying above $10,000 of water and these things when they talk about this a budget that is going to,
My position is very clear in terms both on the electricity and the water. I mean, it is part of the government conservation approach in order to try to discourage waste in water and electricity. And the biggest wasters of water is not ordinary people. It's not rich people who want to spray the lawns, wash the yard every day, wash umpteen vehicles. So they are the real persons who misuse and abuse. And I think they should pay. Because Guyana bulk water, the GWI produce, is the cheapest probably in the world.
Yeah, certainly.
Okay, and they have been having a heyday. And if the rich is being called to either tighten up, use less water, or if you can't use it, then pay a little extra for it. I really have no problem there. Because the statistics have shown that the majority of Guyana, GWI customers fall below the 1,500.
Yeah,
And the same thing applies to electricity. The bulk of the ordinary people don't pay $10,000, pay below that, so they're not going to be affected by the VAT. But I don't care what the private sector say. Those people, the rich and powerful in society, must pay if they want to consume electricity in a certain way.
But when you look at, when I heard about the increase in minimum wage in the private sector, I mean, the minimum wage in the public sector is greater than the minimum wage in the private sector.
This private sector, during the time when the PPP was in power, wasn't even taking on board the demands that workers were making for increased wages and salaries. They weren't doing it.
So, I mean, I can't listen to those people anyway.
And we must not allow them to whitewash us into this whole thing, that the measures will lead to them passing on. They will pass on anyhow. The businessmen in this country who are, they got good businessmen who play it a little fair, because no businessman play fair. But they got the vultures, and the vultures will be vultures, regardless of what the government do.
One of the points that the Minister of Finance made is that when the items were zero rated, they weren't passing on the things to.
Yeah. You go to many of them, they don't give you a bill.
No.
They ask you want a bill, and they don't give you. Which means...
No, but they weren't even reducing the prices for the commodities.
Anyway, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure having you on the program. I look forward to being with you next week when we can possibly continue. After listening to the debates, then we can continue the discourse on the budget and possibly get our colleagues to come and to talk so that people can be clearer on these measures and how they really affect the ordinary people within the country. It's been a pleasure being with you out there, and we look forward to being with you on this program again next week, same time, for Walter Rodney Groundings. Good night.